For more on this, we bring in Yahoo Sports' Dan Wetzel, who has been covering this for a long time. Dan, what's your first reaction to today's news about Mark Hollis?
Well, I was surprised partially, and then part of me knowing Mark Hollis and not surprised. I think what's important here is to say at this point there's no indication that Mark Hollis did anything wrong at Michigan State with the Nassar case or even really had much involvement. Now, that is because we don't have a real full independent investigation of Michigan State. We don't know all that we hopefully will know someday. But having reviewed, everything that is public in this case over the last few months and talking to all of the civil attorneys or many of the civil attorneys who are suing Michigan State, none of them and nothing I've seen ever indicated Mark Hollis really had anything to do with this, knew who Larry Nassar was. To me, this seems more like the captain's got to go down with the ship, and Mark Hollis is a pretty aware guy, and I think he just knew that it's just a matter of time that the pressure would hit, and so he's making this move. But that's all we know at this point.
You bring up, I think, a very important point there, the fact that there is no evidence that Mark Hollis knew of any of this. And again, he said in his statement a few minutes ago to the FBI and the MSU police, he told them he didn't know about it until 2016. So my question is, how much should that matter and how much does that matter?
It matters whether he's criminally culpable or, long-term it's culpable on this, obviously. That matters more than his job. However, he probably could have kept his job and argued, why would I be fired or why should I leave? There's also just a bit of crisis of confidence, and obviously Michigan State needs to do a better job and enter a new era where they have a better system to guard against this. And so at some point you just have to change the leadership. And so when you're in charge, you're in charge. The boat ran aground. And if you set sail again, you don't want the same captain. And I think that's probably it right now as far as we know. Again, I've talked to very skeptical people who are very skeptical and very much looking for blame to sign at Michigan State, and no one's seen anything that involves Mark Hollis. Mark Hollis, why would he be in charge of the doctors? Why would he question the techniques of a doctor? Some of this stuff is out of the purview of an athletic director. Yet at the same time, if you're in charge of the athletic department and some of your athletes are being abused like this, there's a blame game. So it's a tough call. That's why I'm a little surprised. But in the long run, could he have held on for a long term? Probably not. It's just a matter of where these scandals get so big. The tidal wave kind of takes over everybody.
Mark, Dan, you've covered college sports for a long time. How was he seen in the college sports community?
Well, he's extremely highly regarded. He's obviously, if we're just talking wins and losses and things like that, facilities, and I know that pales in comparison when you're dealing with the sexual assaults. So I don't want to, there's the two separate categories. But if Larry Nassar didn't come along, you would look at this as one of the most successful athletic directors in the country. Michigan State is a powerhouse now in many sports. Men's basketball, he has managed to not only to keep Tom Izzo from the NBA many times, obviously the hiring of Mark D'Antonio and the build-up of the Spartan football program, the money, the facilities, all of those things have been really strong. He's obviously a very creative guy. He's always coming up with, let's play a basketball game this here, or let's try this. All the different things. I think he came up with the idea of outdoor hockey, which is now the NHL has kind of co-opted. I think they had that first. I think that was his idea. So very creative guy, very, very well thought of. That said, when you have a tragedy of this level and the damages of this level, and one that it's not just the Spartan athletes, but hundreds of girls in your community, most of them in mid-Michigan, it's hard to sit there and say, hey, football team's doing well. It doesn't really matter. College sports don't matter, not when you're dealing with this. So his accomplishments on the job were one thing, but clearly there was a failure at this school, and as one of the bosses, I think he's stepping down, understanding that this is what really matters, and if this can help bring some closure, some healing, and Michigan State stepping forward without him, then this is the right thing to do for him.
In the last 3 days, we've seen not only the athletic director retire, but the president resign. What still needs to happen at Michigan State, Dan? How do they still need to move forward?
Well, the number one issue at Michigan State is that there needs to be a full criminal investigation into what happened there, who knew what, and all of those things. The problem is that should have started 16 months ago. And for whatever reason, the Michigan Attorney General didn't investigate Michigan State the way the Pennsylvania Attorney General investigated Penn State at the same time as they investigated Jerry Sandusky. The day they indicted Sandusky, they indicted the school president at Penn State and 2 other administrators, including the AD. Michigan's Attorney General just sat on this and didn't do anything, and we've never had a real investigation into Michigan State. So we don't know. You could come out with stuff that gets Mark Hollis, fully to blame and criminally negligent, or we could find out nothing, and he's totally in the clear. We don't know, and that's one of the problems we have in this case, and I don't know what we're going to get at this late date, as many people are not going to speak to anyone. They're going to, the right to remain silent. They're not going to sit down and talk to investigators. So we will see. That's the biggest thing. There are so many questions about Michigan State that we don't have answers to, and obviously 16 months this story kind of simmered and wasn't a big deal. It wasn't front of mind. It was a big deal. All of a sudden now, everyone's demanding answers. We're behind on that, and that would be, I think, good for everybody if we could get a real independent investigation of Michigan State and what their role is, if only to prevent and be used by other schools to guard against this in the future.
Well, the near future of Michigan State will indeed have new leadership at multiple levels starting now. Dan Wetzel from Yahoo Sports, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.